HOA mocked my flower beds, so I turned my yard into a full agricultural cornfield. Have you ever had a neighbor sneer at something you love, something you poured your heart into, and felt the sting of their words like a slap? That's exactly what happened to Mia Thompson when the Willow Creek HOA sent her a scathing letter about her flower beds. Unkempt, they called them. An eyesore. Mia, a single mom with a passion for gardening, had spent years turning her small front yard into a vibrant patchwork of wildflowers, cosmos, zinnias, and sunflowers swaying in the breeze. To her, it was art. To the HOA, it was a violation of their pristine, cookie-cutter standards. That letter wasn't just criticism. It was a declaration of war. Mia stood in her kitchen, the crumpled letter in her hand, her heart pounding with a mix of fury and humiliation. She'd moved to Willow Creek for a fresh start after a messy divorce, hoping to build a quiet life for herself and her teenage daughter, Lily. Her garden was her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in the dirt and coax beauty from the earth. But the HOA, led by Karen, a woman whose perfectly manicured lawn and smug smile screamed control freak, had other plans. Karen's letter didn't just demand Mia fix her yard. It included a photo of her garden circled in red ink with the words "public nuisance" scrawled across it. Mia's blood boiled. She wasn't just going to comply. She was going to fight back in her terms. The truth was, Mia's garden wasn't a mess. It was intentional, a haven for pollinators like bees and butterflies, designed to thrive in the hot Georgia summers. She'd spent hours researching native plants, learning which ones could withstand drought and poor soil. Her yard wasn't a sterile carpet of grass like Karen's. It was alive, buzzing with insects and bursting with color. But Karen and her HOA cronies didn't care about biodiversity or Mia's vision. They wanted uniformity, rows of identical shrubs and chemically treated lawns that looked like they belonged in a golf course brochure. The HOA's rules were clear. Front yards had to conform to their aesthetic standards. And Mia's wildflowers didn't make the cut. The letter threatened fines, liens, even legal action if she didn't rip out her garden and replace it with sod by the end of the month. Mia wasn't one to back down, but she knew she couldn't fight the HOA head-on. They had money, lawyers, and a stranglehold on the neighborhood's image. So she got creative. She spent nights poring over the HOA's 50-page rulebook, searching for loopholes. That's when she found it. A vague clause about agricultural use being permitted on residential lots. A relic from when Willow Creek was farmland decades ago. The clause hadn't been updated, probably because no one thought it would matter. But to Mia, it was gold. If they wanted to play dirty, she'd play dirtier. She wouldn't just keep her garden, turn her entire front yard into a full-blown cornfield. The plan was audacious, but Mia was all in. She called up a local farmer, Mr. Jenkins, who'd been supplying her with compost for years. A grizzled man with a penchant for storytelling. He cackled when Mia explained her idea. "You're gonna give that Karen a heart attack," he said, promising to deliver corn seeds and a tiller by the weekend. Mia enlisted Lily, who was thrilled at the chance to stick it to the HOA together. They spent days ripping up what little grass remained in the front yard, tilling the soil, and planting rows of sweet corn. By the time they were done, the yard looked like a miniature farm, complete with neat furrows and a small scarecrow Lily made from old clothes and a straw hat. Mia stood back, hands on her hips, and grinned. It was ridiculous, glorious, and perfectly legal. The neighborhood's reaction was immediate and explosive. Karen Whitaker stormed over the morning after the corn was planted, her face redder than the zinnias Mia had torn out. "What is this nonsense?" she shrieked, gesturing at the rows of dirt. "You're turning our community into a barnyard." Mia leaned against her porch railing, calm as a cucumber. "It's agricultural use, Karen. Check your own rulebook, page 47, section 3.2. Karen sputtered, unable to form a coherent response, and marched off to rally her HOA allies. Neighbors started whispering, some amused, others horrified. A few, like old Mrs. Carter across the street, secretly cheered Mia on. Mrs. Carter, who'd lived in Willow Creek since it was actual farmland, slipped Mia a note saying, "Give 'em hell, kid." The confrontation came to a head at the next HOA meeting, held in the community center's stuffy auditorium. Karen had whipped the board into a frenzy, and they came armed with threats. Mia walked in alone, her head high, carrying a folder of research and a single corn seedling in a pot as a prop. The room buzzed with tension as Karen took the podium, her voice dripping with disdain. "Ms. Thompson's stunt is a mockery of our community's values," she declared, holding up photos of Mia's cornfield. "We demand she remove this farm immediately." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. That's when the twist came. Mr. Jenkins, the farmer, stood up from the back of the room. No one had noticed him slip in, his weathered overalls a stark contrast to the HOA's pressed khakis. "Y'all realize corn's a native crop, right?" he said, his voice carrying the weight of decades in the fields. "Mia's yard is more in line with this land's history than your fake grass and imported roses. Plus, she's feeding the community. Those stalks'll produce enough corn for half the block." The room fell silent. Jenkins went on, explaining how Mia's cornfield was sustainable, supported local wildlife, and could even reduce grocery bills for neighbors if she shared the harvest. Suddenly, Karen's eyesore argument looked petty, out of touch. A few neighbors clapped, and Karen's face turned a shade of purple Mia hadn't known was possible. The meeting spiraled into chaos. Karen tried to regain control, slamming her gavel and shouting about standards. But the tide was turning. Neighbors who'd been silent started speaking up about how they hated the HOA's overreach, how they missed the old days when yards could have personality. One woman, a quiet librarian named Sarah, admitted she'd always wanted to grow vegetables but feared HOA backlash. Mia's cornfield had cracked open a rebellion. Karen's allies on the board tried to push a vote to amend the agricultural clause, but it was too late. The room was against them. The motion failed, and Mia's cornfield was safe. Karen's downfall was swift and brutal. The HOA's reputation took a hit as neighbors started questioning their authority. Karen, humiliated by the meeting's outcome, stopped showing up to community events. Her pristine lawn, once her pride and joy, began to look neglected as she retreated into her house, unable to face the neighborhood she'd once ruled. Mia's cornfield, meanwhile, thrived. By midsummer, the stalks were taller than Lily, their golden tassels swaying in the breeze. True to her word, Mia shared the harvest, leaving baskets of sweet corn on neighbors' porches. Mrs. Carter made cornbread and invited Mia and Lily over to share it. Even Sarah, the librarian, started a small vegetable patch, inspired by Mia's defiance. The cornfield became more than a middle finger to the HOA. It became a symbol of freedom, of standing up to petty tyrants. Mia's yard wasn't just a garden anymore. It was a statement that beauty doesn't need to fit a mold, that community thrives on individuality, not conformity. As the summer faded, Mia and Lily sat on their porch, eating corn on the cob from their own field, watching fireflies dance in the dusk. They'd turned a moment of shame into a triumph, proving that sometimes the best revenge is living boldly. What do you think? Did Mia go too far? Or was her cornfield the perfect way to shut down Karen's HOA tyranny? Share your thoughts below.